Hi, it's Olivia, and I haven't done a discussion video in a long time. It's way overdue, but today's topic will be on rereading books. I haven't reread a book in a long time, and there's a couple of reasons for that, I think, and also just I have some thoughts on rereading books in general, maybe why it can be a struggle or why, just thoughts. So let's get started. The first thing I'll talk about is rereading books and how that fits into like reading goals and things like a Goodreads reading challenge. Do you count it? I mean, I think you have the option on Goodreads to mark a book as reread, but I know for me, it doesn't, I struggle with counting it as another book that I've read this year, just because, I've read it already. And that kind of ties into reading goals in general, like feeling the need to read as many as you can, and rereading is almost like taking a step backwards from that. It's almost a guilty thing if I start rereading a book because I'm thinking deep down there's an unread book that could be occupying my time right now. Like I could be finishing a new book. So that's a struggle with rereading in terms of reading goals and reaching a number of books. But also, I struggle with rereading books because I genuinely fear not liking the book as much. Maybe this sounds odd, but let me explain. There are certain books that I know I enjoyed in middle school and high school for like different reasons. I would say I was less critical and I just wasn't as harsh with like reviewing books. I was handing out 5 stars like it was nothing, like I was in love with every single book that I was reading, and I just know that if I reread these books I would be critiquing them differently and I'd be catching different stuff. And I don't want to ruin that experience that I had the first time. An excellent example of a book that I think I might not even like anymore once upon rereading is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. Because I know when I first read it I was like, oh my gosh, I love this book. And then now I think about it and I think about the storyline and I'm going, how did I like that? It also brings up something I've been wanting to mention with like cliche books or seeing the same stuff in YA books. A huge part of what is considered like cliche in YA depends on what you read first. Like, I read The Hunger Games first in all of the dystopian books, and so everything after that I read after The Hunger Games has seemed like people have been like, oh, it's cliche because this has happened before in The Hunger Games. What if the thing that people are comparing it, like saying it's cliche because of, it's happened before? What if you never read those other books and this is your first time experiencing it and it's not cliche anymore? Like that's what it was. I feel like I'm not explaining myself well. I feel like when I first read Throne of Glass, I was like, this is so unique and original and blah blah blah. But I feel like if I read it now, I would be catching all these things. I'd be like, I'm so tired of seeing this. This is so typical of YA. It's because I've read it before now. A problem that I had with The Red Queen is that it felt like a giant mixture of everything else that I've read before. And it made me wonder if I hadn't read all that, like what if this was the first book that I read that got me into reading? I wouldn't consider the book cliche. Does that make sense? Anyway, bringing it back to rereading, like I know I enjoyed these books when I first read them, but I fear rereading them because I feel like I should give them separate ratings. Like, this is how I felt about this book in 8th grade, and this is how I feel about it now. Like I wouldn't want to change the rating because I know I would change the rating. Something else I want to talk about is this is just a question too. When you reread books, do you actually read every single word again? Because I've had the issue with, like, a while ago when I would reread a couple of books, sometimes I would just skim over parts. If I know that a part is just a little bit slower, I would skip it. Like I don't actually, do any of you reread books but you're kind of skimming it? I mean, like there's some books I've done that for and there's some books I haven't. Like I have reread Harry Potter once, but I need to reread it again because I'm starting to forget stuff. But I didn't skim that at all, but I forgot what book it was that I reread and I was like, oh man, I am skimming. So I've been kind of bagging on rereading honestly for like the past few minutes, but I want to talk about some good things. If you have book 6 in a series coming out after like a 2 or 3 year long wait, you've read so much stuff since then. It is understandable and kind of necessary to reread book 5 before going into book 6, especially if there's no like nice detailed summaries online. That's sometimes what I resort to, by the way. Rereading obviously is wonderful for catching things that you didn't read, like you didn't catch the first time around. You can see all the little bits and pieces of foreshadowing that you might have missed the first time. It's actually really fun to catch that kind of stuff. Rereading is amazing, but it frustrates me how those things I mentioned in the beginning of the video like hold me back from rereading books. And there's nothing wrong with rereading. It's actually like, it's a wonderful thing. And I think I saw Ariel Bissett, I actually, you know, she might have made a video on this a long time ago. If I can find it, I'm going to link it in the description. But she also tweeted something saying that she might try out a whole year of rereading books, like not reading any new books, just rereading books. That is not something I think I can commit to, but I really like the idea of like setting aside a block of time to only reread books, because I mean, if you love a book, why wouldn't you reread it? I also want to mention Accordance and Fury. I haven't read that, you know, from cover to cover since the first time I read it. I have just reread certain scenes over and over and over again. Like, I do that a lot. Does anyone else do that? Like, you don't reread books, you reread your favorite scenes to the point where you could like know it word for word. And in a lot of my discussion videos I like to relate it to movies, but it's not the same thing, because movies, you know, they're only like 2 hours and that's a long movie. Maybe a long, super long 3-hour movie, but that's really different from reading a book that might take you a few days to read. It's a bit of a different story. I rewatch certain movies all the time, and I continue to do so, and I will till the end of time. Like, I can rewatch Lilo and Stitch until I die. That's what the pictures are, by the way, behind me. But then again, some people don't like to. I actually know someone who told me she doesn't like to rewatch movies. I cannot relate to that. I don't understand. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. Rereading is good, I just don't do it enough, and if you have anything you want to say, let me know in the comments. I'll see you in another video. Bye.